Hello everybody, I'm Cynical Productions, and today I'm going to be covering oh, man, we're going to be covering something so stupid, like, it's mind-numbingly stupid, like, oh, God. Today's topic is going to be a review someone made about Transformers Prime, which I'm fine with, but God, they are so ignorant and have some really stupid takes. So the YouTuber in question is Perspective End, who recently posted a video, specifically this video, a review for Transformers Prime. Now I'm fine with that, but man, it's a review, but he only talks about the parts that he doesn't like, and doesn't talk about anything he does like, so it's just him hating on it. And let me tell you, there's some really stupid things he says in here. He's really just very arrogant, but, yeah. Well, to start off, he goes on a rant talking about how every time he wanted to recommend a show to people, he'd recommend Beast Wars, G1, and Transformers Prime, but every time they'd ask the ending to Prime, or if it was good, he wouldn't know, and that happened 3 times, and he was like, oh, maybe that's not a good sign that I haven't watched the full show. Well, I know what a lot of you are going to say, which is, surely this rant can't be that bad. Well, let's see how he starts the rant about the actual show.
At which point, I finally sat down and watched all of Prime. And you know what? I know why it was a bad sign. Because this show is so fucking boring! Oh my god! It is so punishingly dull!
What a wonderful way to start off a review. Yeah, that's a great way. I love that. So, let's see what else is in store.
But first, your likes! Please give. And if you enjoy this video by the end and you aren't subscribed already, please consider it.
Oh, and I said how much I really don't like listening to this guy talk? I'm usually fine. Like, I don't usually get annoyed at people. It's very rare. I'll get mad at people very easily, but not annoyed. But this guy's voice just annoys me so much.
Anyways, yes, this show is catastrophically, mind-numbingly bland. And when it's not being the most boring fucking thing I've ever persevered through on sheer determination alone, it is shockingly enraging. Again, I want to point out that this is a show that, like many of you, for years I considered to be one of the greats.
So let's see his reasoning for why this show is no longer one of the 3 greats.
Trying to sit through this on a binge, however, showed me that even I can fall victim to flashy presentation on occasion, because watching this all the way through the first time took years off my life. But let's explain how this show got to be so violently monotonous. And it starts with the characters. The problem with Prime is that 90% of the characters are operating on about 40% of the emotional scale. One of the ways I always try to explain this to people is by challenging them to find a character who has a genuine laugh in the show.
I don't think there really is any genuine laugh, because it's a show based on, war and death. So, that was stupid.
Not someone who is laughing evilly, not someone who is laughing condescendingly, not someone who is laughing confidently, someone who just found something funny and belted out loud.
Actually, no. I can think of a genuine laugh, and here's the clip.
Ratchet actually laughed?
And I can't think of who better to start this off with than the titular Prime of Prime. A dude so fucking dull, I actually significantly prefer the movie version of this guy. That douche may be a violent, cruel psychopath, but at least he's not a completely emotionless robot.
So you prefer the genocidal Bayverse Optimus Prime over this Optimus Prime, who, isn't emotionless, and there's several clips that shows him not being emotionless. I'm gonna play those. So as you can see, Optimus Prime definitely has emotions in this show. As explained literally in the show by Ratchet, he has emotions, but he has to keep them in check to be a good leader. Because if he's always dealing with emotions, he can't think or process as easily or strategize. So he was very wrong and did not cite his sources, which is it's something you're going to see a lot in this video.
Primes were forged without a sense of humor. Tell that to the character who once got a good chuckle out of a booby trap that traps boobies. It's not even that great a play on words. That's just how much that dude liked to laugh. Optimus Prime is supposed to have a great sense of humor.
You say he's supposed to have a sense of humor, but in most things, he doesn't. That's really only in G1 and Armada, and a bit of Cyberverse. It's a new character trope, and the characters evolved that way. And you stated later in the video that you're annoyed why there isn't a lot of character changes and development, but you hate this. It's hypocritical and stupid.
But once again, we have shown that Optimus is the single greatest victim of the 1986 movie, because while I love that movie, it is overly revered by the community, and it has overwritten what was once a great character. In that movie, Optimus Prime dies immediately in the middle of an active war zone after kicking a bunch of ass and dropping a few in the moment appropriate platitudes. And even though that was never his characterization, just a result of him behaving as that particular situation demanded, everyone who saw that movie just had it wipe their memory of the guy who came before. Who was Optimus Prime? The father of a generation. Warm, caring, funny, inquisitive, friendly, inviting, principled, gentle, with a great love for new experiences and new ideas.
First off, a lot of things you stated there are true about this Optimus Prime. He just doesn't really have comedy. He is gentle, and he's very kind, and he cares a lot about his Autobots. This is seen many times in the show. I don't understand how you could have watched the full show and not see this.
Who is he now? Stoic? Serious? Cold? Unfunny? Talks too much, saying too little?
While I will admit Optimus Prime is stoic, he has to be, and he has emotions, and that talks too much but says too little thing is stupid. You just don't understand wisdom. Like, a lot of his quotes have shaped me as a person. He is an important figure to me.
A powerful combatant? And in Prime, they turned that up to 11. I don't even call this dude Optimus. This is Platitudes Dispenser 9000. A completely emotionless robot who's only good for punching things and puking out proverbs.
Again, you just don't understand wisdom.
I have spoken to tons, and I mean this, tons of more recently minted Transformers fans who absolutely despise Optimus Prime, because they only know him through his depiction in this show. My friend, who I introduced to the fandom through Beast Wars that I talked about at the start, he's one of them. He loathes Optimus.
Have you ever considered that your friends and other people you've met that don't like this incarnation of Optimus don't like him because, you know, they're your friends and are similar to you, so they share your ideals?
To the point where he's always super happy when Optimus dies because it gets him out of the series for a decent while. And that's all because this was his introduction to the character, and he's just such a horrific charisma vacuum here. The dude has the personality of a styrofoam block, and you can see with a lot of the recent depictions of Optimus in comics and shows just how far that interpretation pervades.
I wonder why. Is it perhaps that a majority of the fanbase likes this incarnation of Optimus Prime, and you're in the minority that just really doesn't like him, and despite really saying it, doesn't like when characters evolve? No way.
In modern shows, Optimus is not just boring, he's openly mocked for being boring and out of touch in the actual content of the series by his own troops.
First off, he's not mocked, it's like an inside joke. There's a difference between, it's like if a stranger would go up to you and say, haha, you're, really short and stupid, between if your family goes up to you and says that. One's in a joking way, and one's probably in a more literal way. Stupid.
Not just fans who are sick of this shit, but an actual story canon.
Yeah, fans, and not just a small specific group of fans. All of them, for sure.
It is pretty much just accepted fact that if you know Optimus in this fandom, you know that he's lame and annoying, which the man whose death scarred a generation should not be.
Only you and a certain amount of people think he's boring.
Siege may be character assassination, but this one is the most boring, the most lifeless. The one that justified Siege in trying to make you hate him because you were already expected to.
I don't recall ever being told specifically to hate that version of Optimus Prime. And honestly, I don't, but this incarnation is definitely better. And also the voice acting. No offense to the Siege voice actor, it's just Peter Cullen does a lot. And also, yeah, Peter Cullen's better.
Now, Optimus was by far the most boring character in the show, but that's not to say that the rest of them weren't gunning for that fucking title. Bulkhead has nothing going on. He is a version of the character who had every interesting aspect stripped out of him. Gone is the simple country bumpkin who learned everything there is to know about space bridges.
Well, you're kind of right, but he's not an idiot. He's a construction worker before the war started. That has been mentioned several times in the show. He's not stupid. So, yeah, that was a really dumb he's not stupid. He definitely not.
Replaced with a guy who was a wrecker, kind of has a habit of breaking things. He's one of the few characters who ever laughs, but it's always at a 5 out of 10 on the emotional scale.
I'm still shocked that your main problem with these characters is just that in a war scenario where they've lost comrades, they aren't busting out laughing. Oh, God, that's so stupid. Oh, God, it's so dumb.
He's not dying, it's just guy chuckles. Everyone in this show has the energy of your grandparents. RC is just frigid, she's cold and distant, and so dark and broody.
Yep, you really nailed the character there. Definitely just dark and broody like an edgy teenager. Not like they witnessed people die right in front of them several times. Or like they have mental, problems and severe trauma. Definitely not. Just edgy. That's it. Just a phase.
But like all the characters, her emotions are so deadened. When she screams Tailgate's name as he gets his throat slit, it's at best like a 6 out of 10.
Sure, the scream could have been better, but voice acting is hard, and also, I can't even, physically scream. My body won't let me, so better than what I can do.
You just watched your partner die, but I've seen people scream with more emotion in their voice when someone got out of the car and forgot to engage the parking brake, so it rolled into a lamppost.
Maybe that's because it's a real-life scenario where their life could be ruined from being in debt, from having to repair or buy a new car after it gets damaged. And this is voice acting, which is fake, so you have to try to replicate that, which can be hard. And I don't even know if that voice actress is trying to do a voice, which make it especially harder if you're trying to scream while doing a voice.
Ratchet I want to love because he's played by Jeffrey Combs, but like everyone, he's just so flat. He's got a little more than most of his team by virtue of being curmudgeonly, but even when he explodes in anger, it's always at a simmer. I'm getting bored just describing these characters because they all have the same problem. They're all too serious all the time, and none of them are any fun.
How many times do I have to tell you, or how many times does it take for you to realize that this is a war scenario? No one's going to be having a jolly good time. This is the best war I've ever been a part of. Dude, you're so stupid.
And you'd think that the Decepticons would fare better, but Soundwave is literally not a character, and it actually pisses me off when I hear people talking about how scary he is. The dude is just a metal shipping container placed in the corner of every scene he's in that people act like is super menacing, but it's just a lifeless object. He's a prop, not a person, standing stiffly, never speaking, never gesturing, never doing anything. Characters just look at him and put their own interpretations on him because there's literally nothing actually there. And the whole actions speak louder than words thing is the stupidest, cringiest thing. It makes literally no sense, especially for a soldier, who may have to shout things like, enemies on the right, or something. Because if you don't do shit like that, then congrats, you just got a bunch of your team killed, also that way you could prove to no one who's impressed what a big man you are by not talking. I guarantee you, Megatron and Starscream do not give a shit that Soundwave doesn't talk.
While you're right that Megatron and Starscream could care less that he's not talking, some people have their own ideals, and they don't need other people to talk about it. And so that's his way of showing his allegiance, stupid. And also, the whole actions speak louder than words is cringy and stuff, that's in your opinion. And also, using the word cringy to something that's not really cringy, or just in general, is cringy. It's very ironic, and that's why I don't really use the word. And Soundwave isn't a soldier. He may be in the Decepticon military, but he is a command officer. The communications officer. He doesn't have to fight, but when he does, he is a total badass. Mind my language.
And why does he even need to prove this? Someone who's capable doesn't have anything to prove.
Again, he doesn't have anything to prove, but it's his way to show his allegiance. Whether anyone else cares or not, Those are his ideals, and he's gonna stick by them.
Then there's Breakdown, and I can't really describe Breakdown. He's kind of angry. That's about it. And somehow, he's one of the characters in the show who had the most potential, because at a point he comes to owe the Autobots and Starscream personally a serious debt, and they're playing at who is he going to remain loyal to. He's having second thoughts. Maybe the Autobots don't have to be his enemy.
While personally I do kind of find Breakdown a boring character, it's mainly just he was never cool to me, but that's just my opinion. I'm sure to other people he's really cool. And also, he's definitely not the one with the most wasted potential. That's easily Dreadwing.
And then like one fucking episode later, he fucking dies off fucking screen, with none of that ever being raised again.
Kinda true, but also not. His death was mentioned a couple episodes later. I don't quite remember the distance, but once Silas recreates Breakdown and controls his body, Knockdown gets mad at Silas and talks about Breakdown's death. So you're wrong.
Then there's Starscream, who's just baffling, but manages to be at least a little fun. He's conniving, he's vampy, he's very heavily queer-coded, but he also manages to go on a completely insane character progression where he doesn't so much grow as actually become less interesting. And he's honestly really irritating with the way that he constantly brags that he killed an Autobot with Cliffjumper.
So, let me get this straight. You're mad that Starscream's character is acting like Starscream? God, what even... I don't know what your opinion is.
Which just makes you realize that somehow in millions of years of war, he'd never managed to do that before.
Yep, that sounds like Starscream.
Because you wouldn't phrase it like, I killed an Autobot, and you wouldn't bang on and on about it if you had ever done any more than that one. It's like he thinks that no one else has ever killed an Autobot before because he never had.
Well, Starscream is known to brag, so, you know.
Then there's Knockout, the only enjoyable character in the show. The only enjoyable character in the show.
Knockout definitely is one of my favorite Transformers Prime Decepticons. He's definitely not, like, my complete favorite, though, and he is pretty fun, but, yeah, not the only enjoyable one. There's definitely others.
Who is the only character who is clearly just loving their life. He's having a good time, and it's infectious. And maybe that's only because literally everyone around him is the apotheosis of the concept of the color gray.
Well, that's most likely because he's, kind of a surgeon who is sometimes sent out into battle because the troops are incompetent. So, that's probably why he's not as miserable as the other people, because he hasn't seen as much action, because he's a surgeon, a medical officer. And you may be wondering, but Ratchet's a friggin' medical officer. Yeah, but he's actually fought in battles on Cybertron. If you've played or watched the War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron games, you'd know that. Cite your sources.
But he stands out as a bright spot in this snore of a show. And then you get to Megatron, and this show was not content with just having the worst Optimus, it must also have the worst Megatron. Everyone's always on about how terrifying this version of Megs is, how threatening. No, he's not. You just think he is, because he has sharp teeth, a raspy voice, and he looks scary.
I don't think anyone's actually scared by the character. It's a case that people think the character is awesome and one of the best versions there is, so they will compliment the character, such as, he's menacing, he's so scary. So, yeah, you're technically right, but ignorant.
But I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm sorry, but I'm not intimidated by incompetence. This dude is an infuriating moron. His plans constantly fail, not because the Autobots are so capable, but because he is too dumb to live, constantly sabotaging himself and his faction out of pure ego and vanity. He is, in fact, the Autobots' single greatest asset. If he just stayed in a coma, then every time his faction had the upper hand, he wouldn't have been available to cut their own legs out from under them so he could have the pleasure of being the one to kill Optimus himself, which is the stupidest, cringiest bullshit in the universe. Any character who uses that phrase instantaneously loses all of my respect and gains all of my hatred. I don't know how I'm supposed to be afraid of a dude who is his own downfall at every turn. He is the reason he fails, and I don't fear pathetic losers.
So many stupid things were just said there. Sure, Megatron is sometimes incompetent, but he doesn't always lose battles. He has won several battles, which is another reason why the show is so liked. The villain doesn't always lose, compared to a certain G1 Megatron who's very incompetent and doesn't even have a reason to be. Unlike this version of Megatron, who at least has a reason, which is he wants to kill Optimus. Maybe because they had a past that makes him hate him. So he needs that revenge. God, you're so hypocritical, and... it's so... I mean, everyone's hypocritical, but this is just a whole new level of stupid. And if you call someone a loser, like, if you actually use the word loser, sir, you are the loser. And especially to a fictional character?
And then there's the humans, and don't even get me started on them. I can sum up Jack's entire character by just going, I'm a teenager.
You don't pay attention to anything. You just think all teenagers are the same, because he definitely he didn't really act like that. Only sometimes. Like, sure, he did some teenagery stuff, but he wasn't like, I'm a teenager, no one understands me. He's rather outgoing and just sometimes a bit shy to talk to people. It's just only when he's with friends and in his comfort zone that he's really outgoing and a good person. Like, that was an ignorant comment.
Raph the Wunderkid is such a tired trope that they don't do anything with, outside the fact that he can somehow understand Bumblebee because his family is a racist stereotype, so he's used to trying to listen through a crowd. I'm sorry, but how the fuck does that mean that he can speak alien binary?
Sure, there might be a bit of a stereotype there, but I'm fine to overlook that, and since it hasn't been brung up a lot, I'm pretty sure a lot of other people have been willing to. Also, I'm pretty sure he's able to speak to Bumblebee for an unexplained reason that I think is because he talks in beeps, right? And pauses. So it was probably going to be explained that he's speaking in Morse code, and Raph probably understands that, but that's not confirmed.
You may have noticed that I've not mentioned Bumblebee yet, and that's because he's not a character, as they've stuck with a movie characterization that can't speak. They do this because humans inherently view things that can't speak as more baby-like or animal-like, so are therefore more innocent and more easily bonded with. It's also why they gave him the big eyes and the exaggerated body language, so you can physically see when he's happy or angry by his posture, just like how a dog wags its tail. They do it to turn him into a puppy, not a person. This is a common practice in media. If the people who made this show went to school for this shit, then they were taught this. It doesn't matter if you don't think that's what they were doing. It is impossible that they wouldn't know the implications of what they were doing with this trait, and there is no other reason for them to do it.
I'm just gonna straight up say it. You're a dumbass. Like, mind my language, but honestly, I don't care. Like, at this point, you're, like, so, basically, you're mad that they designed him to look innocent, even though that he's kind of like that character, and he has a lot of emotion, and he's kind of hype and sassy and sometimes. And, like, perhaps the reason he has a lot of physical movements and stuff is because he can't speak, and, you know, otherwise it's going to be kind of hard to tell what he means and how he feels. So don't try to act like there's a bigger picture and just common practice. Sometimes it is, but it's not this case. You were complaining about not having emotion in characters, and then you got mad that this character has emotion, except he can't, like, he just can't talk. Like, what do you want? You're impossible to please. And Bumblebee has been an innocent character since G1, so he's just being the character from the original cartoon.
It literally serves no other purpose, because if you didn't notice, Bumblebee doesn't seem very intent on getting his voice back. Ever. It's not a motivation for him. It's an excuse to infantilize him.
Which is most likely because he's probably had his voice gone for a while. Since, before they left Cybertron, he's probably lost hope of getting his voice back, and now that he's able to communicate through beeps, he doesn't really need to. Like, he's stated in the show that he's fine talking like this in the later seasons, and around season 3.
Otherwise, they would try and do anything with it. And then there's Miko. Fuck Miko. Miko is a sociopath who views other humans as obstacles to her fun and the Cybertronians as toys to amuse herself with. I don't give a shit that, oh no, she's from another stereotypically racist family, Asian parents who were too strict, so she has the right to treat other sentient beings like playthings and constantly endanger other people's lives because her life is so unfair.
So, sure, it technically is a racist stereotype, but there's more. Like, all 3 of their parents are strict, with Jack's mom being the less strict. All of them are strict, so it's not really something specific to them. So stop acting like it's racist and like they're a victim. So, you know, there's that. And also, Miko is the epitome of a teenager. So, she's just a teenager. So you honestly are just really don't like teenagers. And you act like they're the victim and then hate on them because they think they're the victim. Do you have brain damage? Like, for real?
Nothing drives this home quite like 1, the fact that she gets offended when the other humans tag along with her because they're in the way of her fun with this war, and 2, the episode where Bulkhead's memory is getting erased, where she, against the orders of his doctor and everyone else around him who cares, kidnaps him from treatment so she can go to a parking lot.
Yes, that was a bad decision, but she's a teenager and she's dealing with pent-up anger and aggression, and sadness because her close friend is losing his memory at rapid rates and doesn't even remember her anymore. Robot dementia. And then so she makes a bad decision by accident under the stress, and I can't really blame her for that.
She has no reason to expect that this could help and no plan on how to fix him. She just did it because she wanted to, and it is only by happenstance that this saves him. It was a reckless act by someone who did not see the other person involved as a sentient being and was only upset that their favorite toy was breaking.
I think you're more of the one without emotions here, because she definitely sees Bulkhead as more of a friend than a toy. Come on. Bro, stop making excuses for hating the character. Damn, bro. You just really hate teenagers. Did they, bully you as a child? Bro, where's this coming from? And why are you so annoyed at a fictional character?
And then there's Wheeljack. Fuck Wheeljack. But you all know my reasons for hating this douchebag who doesn't know how to shut the fuck up.
No, actually, I don't. I would love for you to elaborate about that.
But yeah, that was over 2,000 words about how the characters are either agonizingly dull, aren't characters, or are blood-curdlingly infuriating.
Oh, you just aren't? You're just gonna carry on, not gonna elaborate why you hate this character? Okay. Leave us all in the dark. Okay. I assume you hate him the same way you hate RC, because they're dark and gloomy and a lone wolf.
But there's so much more to this turn of a show than just that. So let's get into the animation, which people tend to really applaud with this show, and I used to as well. Back before I had a degree in 3D animation. Now that I do, I can see that this is not top-tier animation, putting past entries to shame.
Congratulations! You spent a lot of money to get a degree about 3D animation, or just animation in general, and you ended up doing toy reviews. Congratulations, and hating on a 10-year-old animated show.
Beast Wars was a bunch of brilliant creatives working on something that they loved making with technology 10 years too early, inventing things that didn't even exist yet just to better tell the story they wanted.
Yep, that tends to be how animation evolves, not specific to Beast Wars.
Prime, on the other hand, is a passionless paycheck, made by a mercenary team who didn't give half a fuck about what they were doing, just using more advanced tools than was available previously, and it's blatant.
You didn't check any of your sources about anything. This show was made with a passion. There's a book about the development of the series, and it literally says that. It was just limited because it was in the continuity it didn't want to be in. So they had to try to squeeze it in with the rest of the other media in the same universe. And the show didn't even really make a lot of money. It went over budget several times, causing Hasbro to be in debt for around 10 years.
I saw the first episode of Earthspark, my jaw dropped, because while the art style of the show is ugly as sin,
I can't believe there's something we actually kinda agree upon. I don't care much for the art style, but that's only because the faces look a bit weird sometimes. But other than that, I like it.
the animation is divine, a thing of beauty. It is expressive and fluid and deep, so utterly creative. Everything reacts. The world is a plaything for these animators. Someone shoots a gun, and they're too low to their target, so they can't get the angle they need.
So they just aren't able to shoot the target? That's not exclusive to this show. How cool.
Scraping the edge of their target's cover. As the leader runs across the tops of the container she's on, she imparts force into them, causing them to topple over.
It's almost like there's a such thing as physics.
They get into an extended fistfight, and everything is gorgeously choreographed, all handled in large extended poses where these guys clearly had a keyframe animator as the shipping crates almost fall on them. This fight is completely unique and distinct to this location, and this location alone. This fight could only happen here. Meanwhile, in Prime, even the action is horrifically boring, because if you've seen a single fight in Prime, then you've seen every fight in Prime. It doesn't matter where the fight is set, it's the same fight every single time.
Perhaps that's because they're not always going into cities, because they still have to try to keep their identity secret from the human populace. And so they have to fight in genuinely similar locations, such as in forests, in valleys, and in Decepticon areas. So there's not much variety.
The Autobots come Leroy Jenkins running into a kill box, mostly firing at targets off screen. If we're lucky, there will be one guy in their way. When they get to the dead center of the enemy formation, where they are at their most disadvantaged, they stop, the camera dramatically pans around them as they go back to back, firing at targets you can't see. Someone does slow motion martial arts on an enemy who for some reason ran into melee with them or was already there when the Autobots arrived. Continue with dramatic camera angles that give you no clear picture of what this pitched battle is like, since if we could see it properly, we'd know how bad the Autobots just screwed themselves.
So you're mad at good cinematography?
Rinse and repeat every single episode with maybe some added flavor like the Autobots taking cover behind a big rock, and then the big rock takes too big an explosion. It doesn't fall on anyone or anything, it just ceases to exist. There is no substance to any of these fights. Just razzle-dazzle style that's meant to wow you while not actually being something that anyone put any thought into.
Well, the reason the fights are there are for story purposes and entertainment, and the razzle-dazzle makes it entertaining, so perhaps it's accomplishing the goals it's supposed to.
There is one good fight in all of Prime, and ironically it features Wheeljack, and that's the Predaking vs. Wheeljack and Ultra Magnus one. That fight is glorious, it's perfect, it's beautiful. Dare I say, it made me hate Wheeljack a little less.
I still don't know why you hate Wheeljack so much, and there's definitely cooler fights, like Wheeljack versus, Soundwave, and Optimus versus Megatron in the first season, near the finale, and others. There are plenty of good fights. This isn't the only good one. It's just because of variety. You need all of your fights to be so different. Like, it just needs to be entertaining.
Up until he opened his stupid mouth and ruined it.
Do you just not like how he sounds or how he talks? Like, what's with the hate?
But this fight looked like they had a vision, that they had a keyframe animator, and maybe even a storyboarder.
No, they've had those. They just don't want to have to put extra resources and time into making you specifically like the show.
But every other fight in the show is a complete copy-paste to the point of monotony that are all the same over and over. And the few times that they aren't, like Wheeljack versus Soundwave, they are just uninspired, giving into the same habits as everything else.
A lot of fights in this show between two major characters are melee fights. Probably because they don't want to just blast at people, because that's kind of boring. So these melee fights have to do blocks and attacks, so they have to be unique, and you don't like it when, the fights have to be different, but since they're melee, they're the same. Come on.
The constant switch to slow-mo doesn't look cool, it just lowers the impact of the hits. Slow-mo, not slow-mo. Slow-mo, not slow-mo. Do you see how much more power it looks like Alita has because her fight runs in real time without pointless stoppages?
Incorrect. Prime looks better for a specific reason. You sped up the footage, or it just looks like that, and either way, because of how it looks, it doesn't look like there's any impact. It just looks like people fighting each other, and Prime has slow-mo because it's hard to give an impact. So the slow-mo adds in replace of no impact.
And it's not even just the fights, it's everything about this show. It's how their transformations aren't actually designed, so they basically just explode into tornadoes of parts that reform into their robot modes.
They have a unique style of transformation, and I'll give them that. It's cooler than most transformation because it's fast, and it's like they actually know how to transform, and they aren't just transforming slow for dramatic effect. They're transforming because they just do that.
It's how their mouths are just these perfectly cut holes into their faces, like they're made out of a pie crust.
Most likely because, in the Bayverse, they kind of look scary to most people because they're too human, and they chose this way to not look too human. And the same aesthetic choice applies to G1, so come on.
It's how the lighting is so constantly flat and lifeless. This show has one trick to try and make scenes look interesting, and that's to make everything else super dark with one center light. But the whole show is already remarkably dark. Everything looks like it's lit with fluorescent bulbs, and it's got this gray filter over it. It's so tiring to look at.
Well, that's an aesthetic choice that I think benefits the themes of the show. And if you want something more vibrant, and, something more like G1, go watch G1 or animated. If you don't like this show, don't watch it.
Everything just has this plasticity to it, so the humans don't look like humans. Instead, they look more like toys than the actual robots who are meant to sell toys. But that's a minor concern, honestly. An interesting series doesn't even need visuals. After all, books are a thing. So if the show is ugly or uninspired looking, at least it has other ways to keep us interested.
Thinking the show is ugly is your opinion, so I guess...
Fortunately, that's a lost fucking cause here because this show never evolves. The characters do not change, with a bare few exceptions. Starscream learns to lick Megatron's boots, Wheeljack learns to stop completely refusing to be part of a team, Ratchet learns to stop viewing humans as inferior, despite the fact that there's not really a perceptible change in his attitude after that. At best, he stops talking about it, which just means that he actually lost a character trait and became even more boring.
So let me get this straight. you're mad that characters don't evolve, and you mention that some of them do evolve, but you don't like how they evolved, even though they lost their toxic traits and became better people. There's no way you, like, there's no way that you actually think that way. Like, come on.
And I guess Fowler learns that he kind of likes the Autobots, so he stops arguing with them so much.
Yeah, you want to know what that's called? You want to know what that's called? It's called character development. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's a really useful tool that you just seem to ignore.
Oh, I just love how the very little character development we get actually makes these losers have even fewer interesting dynamics. Outside of that, Optimus is a vending machine that dispenses empty proverbs and sucks all of the joy out of the room for payment when he is introduced, and he's still a charisma black hole deeper and darker than the well of Allsparks he jumps into at the end.
We get it. You don't like characters that can have emotional differences than the average sane person. We get it. You're stupid.
Bulkhead is a moderately jovial guy who hangs out with Nico in episode 1 and in 60. RC stays serious and cold, maybe forming a creepy sexual bond with a human teen millions of years younger than her.
So just because he's a teenage boy who's friend with, an older woman, it's a creepy sexual bond and not just a friendship? Dude, I can't take you seriously.
Bumblebee is a brick, Soundwave is a brick, Breakdown is a brick, all the way up until he dies. Even the jokes in this don't evolve. I cannot even begin to tell you how painful the "Bulkhead, I needed that" joke becomes after the 10th time it was never funny in the first place.
Cool, you have a different sense of humor than the show. Or you can't stand simple gags instead of overcomplicated ones. That's not the show's fault, that's just your taste. So, not the show's problem. It's like when people who don't like Friends hate on it because it was made for an entirely different generation and have a different sense of humor than them. Like, it's stupid logic.
It never changes, it never grows. Bulkhead breaks some nondescript, previously unseen item and Ratchet yells at him for it. And there are so many ways that you could take this joke. You could have him accidentally fall on the object and get blamed for it. You could establish just how needed the item is. Maybe someone's been poisoned and Ratchet's like, "It's okay, I'll use my antidote synthesizer on them and they'll be right as rain." Then he opens the case it's kept in and it's empty. There's a silence, punctuated by confused noises from Ratchet, while the camera slowly pans over to Bulkhead, who's standing like 5 feet to the right, already with the synthesizer in hand, just going, "The con's using poison really grinds my gears," and then he throws it into a wall. You could have Ratchet getting progressively angrier about it and start chasing Bulkhead around for it. You could have Bulkhead pick up a beaker and start talking about the cons. As he does so, he gets more and more heated, getting louder and angrier, but halfway through, Ratchet just yells at him, "No! No! You have broken enough of my stuff! No more, Bulkhead! I've had it! You put that down! You put it down on the table right now!" Then Bulkhead just gingerly sets it down on the table with a scared expression. He's got his hands up in the air. He's backing away from the table slowly. It's quiet for a second. Then the object rolls off the table and breaks on the ground. Bulkhead, I needed that! But no, the joke is the same every time because this series never progresses in any way.
Well, that's because the gag is a simple one, and they don't want to put a ton of effort into a joke that's only supposed to be there as a gag sometimes. And sure, it would have been cool to see it a bit overcomplicated like that one time, because that was honestly a pretty good, well-written joke. Some things could be critiqued, but I don't really care. So, sure.
It's the same episode, with the same fights and the same character dynamics, episode after episode. But at least the show has a serious tone, right? Like, it's the Darkest Transformers cartoon, and therefore it's good, right? Well, one, that's just incorrect. The Darkest Transformers show is Beast Machines, and that show also sucks.
The only reason that show is dark is because some of their friends get turned into, mindless robots. And sure, that is really dark, but Prime has a lot more dark things going on. So even if it may not be as dark, it has a lot more dark stuff in it, amounting to more, such as death, trauma, blood, granted Cybertronian blood, and also, friends being turned into literal zombies, that too, and also being cut in half, that's true. You completely forgot to mention that, by the way, too. You didn't even bring that up, so, yeah.
But two, being dark is not a good thing. It's also not a bad thing. It's a neutral thing. You can't make a show better just by making it dark.
Well, the reason the show's liked for being more dark is because it's, a refreshing take with dark stuff, but not complete psychopaths and likable characters. That's why the show's liked a lot.
And three, is it? Is it actually dark? This show starts with the death of Cliffjumper because it's trying to set the tone that it's dark, but who is Cliffjumper here? Did anyone cry about Cliffjumper dying? No, because he wasn't a character. You can't care about a character you've only spent 2 minutes with. You have had no time to get attached to this dude, which is why they were comfortable with killing him off in the first place, honestly.
Both things you mentioned were just wrong. First off, he is a character that we've seen before in this universe, in the Wolf of Cybertron games, specifically Fall of Cybertron. He's a major and a playable character. And so, this is the same guy. And so that, you're supposed to have played the games or watched them for the emotional impact. So the death does have some people cry, and it started the trope of killing Cliffjumper off, or at least one of the first ones that comes to mind. And the reason they were really comfortable killing him off was because his voice actor was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and really expensive. So they had to kill him off, so they didn't get in debt, even more than they already were.
The only way anyone felt anything for this walking corpse was through transitive property. They knew the character from G1, so they felt like they knew him here.
Again, because of the War of Cybertron games, not because of G1.
But then, who else dies? Breakdown, who was an underdeveloped bad guy. Skyquake, who was an underdeveloped bad guy with basically no character. Hardshell, who was an underdeveloped ascended background bad guy. Makeshift, who was an underdeveloped bad guy whose personality we knew literally nothing about because he pretended to be Wheeljack the whole episode. Dreadwind, who was actually a character, though a confusing one since he was an honorable warrior who also really liked incredibly honorable tactics like putting mines on the bodies of dead people.
Yes, he was an honorable character, and an honorable death is what he means. As long as the death is honorable and not too disgraced, it is fine. And the person also has to have earned their honorable death. So perhaps desecrating someone's grave is in character because they did not earn their honorable death, so they did not get one. So it was fine desecrating his corpse to him. His logic still stands.
And Megatron, who I don't know about you, but I don't really consider killing off the main villain in the last minutes of the last episode dark. And he doesn't even stay dead.
Sure, killing off Megatron at the end of the show isn't dark, but you know what happened to him is? Sure, he got resurrected, but it's in the most dark way I'm pretty sure we've ever seen in a show. He got resurrected because of some of the dark energon still in his systems. Unicron reanimated his corpse and had to make him his slave. And so, because of this, he was forced to attack everybody, which he probably doesn't mind, but he still didn't want to do it. And so, after he gets free, he realizes what it feels like to be forced to do what he doesn't want to, just like before the wars, when he was forced to go into the mines and dangerous acts. So he realizes what he's done, and he leaves and tries to end the war. Or he does end the war. So it's an emotional way for the war to have ended, in good writing that you just don't recognize.
Meanwhile, spoilers for Beast Wars, a show that doesn't even remotely purport to be dark, who dies? Almost all of them.
But you know who gets revived? Almost all of them. Almost every single one of them, except if they're a Predacon. If they're a Predacon, they still get revived so often that when characters do actually die, I don't care, because it happens too often that I think they're going to be revived. And even if they don't be, I just forget about them. Like, here's how many times they freaking get revived. I'm going to play every single clip. Okay, scratch that. I was probably going to be able to get all the clips, but it would have taken way too long, because the only videos of of the deaths were of the actual deaths, which was over 9 minutes long and was only a part 1. So there's a handful of deaths there, so I guess you're right that main characters do actually die, but there are so many more insignificant deaths where they just get revived in those pod things. So because of overusing deaths, the weight of the death is lost, and so your point kinda stands, but not really.
Out of 22 main characters in the show, 14 of them die. We also see an early hominid devoured by a snake, and a great many of them get slaughtered by the Predacons.
And get revived.
More than half the cast in a show that does not pretend to be dark dies. And it's not just the bad guys who do either. A lot of those casualties are our heroes. When someone dies in Beast Wars, it's not a character that the other characters cared about, it's a character that you cared about.
The only character on the Maximal side that I can actually think of that died was Dinobot, and he gets revived in the 3rd season as a clone, so he doesn't even really die. And they reused the trope of a clone for Dinobot. He already had a clone in the 1st season, which couldn't transform, but it was a clone nonetheless, so they reused the idea 2 times.
Now, I'm not saying that one show having more character deaths or more important character deaths than another makes it the preferable show. Having characters die, if done well, can be a good thing.
Sure, Beast Wars wrote some meaningful deaths, but they were overwritten by revives. So, yeah, sometimes it can be good, but in Beast Wars' case, they didn't do it that well.
But so can not killing them. But if Prime is going to sit here and act like it's the Dark Transformer series and then only kill off characters that mean nothing to anyone because no one knows who the fuck they are, then I'm going to call bullshit. It's not dark, it's a lie. It pretends to be dark because it's so stupid that it thinks that just being dark makes the series better.
Again, it's not dark specifically because of the deaths. It's dark because of the topics it handles about deaths and trauma. So, yeah, it is dark, just not the kind of dark that you'd prefer. Plus, you seem to not really care if it's dark or not, so doesn't really matter.
But it's not willing to make the sacrifices needed to actually be dark. Killing Cliffjumper isn't a tragedy that sets the tone for the series, it's a trick, using a cardboard cutout they hope you will care about because you know...
Incorrect. It's definitely not a tragedy, but it does set the tone.
Name to try and make you think that the show has stakes and is that oh so alluring, dark and mature. But it's not real darkness. The characters aren't really at any risk. There's a reason why the Decepticons are a horde of faceless nobodies in this show. In Beast Wars, if you shot a Predacon, that's Pterosaur or Waspinator. But this show wanted to seem like it had consequences, so instead of it being Tarantulas who get shot, it's nobody. And they stay down, at least as far as you know, and there's millions of them. And they all look exactly the same, so that one's probably dead.
Well, you know, the reason why in Beast Wars it's actual characters you like that get shot is because they don't have access to an infinite army and they're stranded on a planet, unlike in Transformers Prime, where it's a full war, and normal soldiers aren't going to be main characters on both sides. They're not going to make main characters for every single Viacon. So, yeah, like, the soldiers are gonna be nobodies. That's how soldiers work.
Which brings me to another point about this awful show. The plot guns here are insane. Weaponry is only as deadly in this series as the scene needs it to be. The Autobots can wind up in the center of 100 Viacons who are all shooting at them at once, and it doesn't matter that they should end up shredded like cheese. If the scene wants them to win, then the Viacons have worse aim than stormtroopers, and the Autobots will never get hit. Or if they do, it's barely an inconvenience. Sometimes shots cause massive injury. Sometimes shots do basically nothing. There are no rules in any of these fights.
While that is true, and it definitely is a drawback, many other shows do this. It's not specific to Transformers Prime. It's even outside of Transformers. This isn't anything specific to them, nor is it something new. This has been a thing for a while. So it's just a trope. So, yeah.
You cannot gauge how it's going because the weapons and units are only ever as capable as the writer demands. Every fight is an ass pull, and as a result, every fight is unsatisfying. There's never any consequences to any of the combat. And if there could be, then the characters are too stupid to capitalize on it. There's that one time where Starscream breaks into the Autobots' base while in a temporary super speed boost, and he thinks about killing the Autobots, but instead he decides against it because he wants to loot the place first. Hey, dumbass! Kill them all, then loot the place at your leisure. They can't stop you if they're dead, and you won't even need to bother looting them if they are, because killing them means you won the war.
Well, there's probably a reason why you didn't kill him, is because he stole the artifacts, but if he goes to the warship and Megatron still refuses, like, to let him in, and, you know, just takes the artifacts, he's not going to be able to go anywhere, so he's going to have to run back home to them. So, you know, that's probably why. I don't understand why reviewers have to be spoon-fed information and can't just think about something and make sense of it.
But I'm starting to ramble. This show is so boring, the episodes just run together, and I had to punish myself to make this review by rewatching a good chunk of the show. Yet I still can't describe half of it because it's all so generic the show just blends together in the worst way possible.
Look, you can say the show's boring, but it's 1,000 times more entertaining than G1 to me, because personally, I'm not really the biggest fan of 80s cheese. That doesn't mean it's bad, that just doesn't mean... It just means that it's not what I'm looking for. So, honestly, that's more boring than this to me, because this has action, and it isn't just inconsequential fights where, you know, the villain always loses. And you may say, but Megatron killed Optimus Prime. Yeah, that's also true, but Megatron got so damaged and got left behind, so it was pretty much a draw, a tie. He didn't even win. Neither of them won. And some of you might also defend the G1 show by saying, well, it's just entertaining sometimes. Look, I'm looking for a story with some action, and G1 is just to have a good time, and I'm looking for a story, and G1 overwrites its backstories and stories all the time.
The characters all have a reasonable number of character traits. They aren't two-dimensional by any stretch of the definition, but they are all played so flat they still end up like cardboard cutout.
This isn't something specific to Transformers Prime. G1 does this a heck of a lot more than Transformers Prime. It's notorious for cutting out characters and their personalities when it doesn't serve the purpose of selling toys to make more money. So, yeah.
This story is utterly inconsequential. I challenge any of you to tell me what the majority of the show is actually about. You can give a recap of Beast Wars seasons that tell people the goal of each one. Season 1 is the war over Energon and trying to get home. 2 is about gaining control over alien weapons and the fate of the future. And 3 is all about preventing Megatron from changing the past. But you can't do that with this show. What's Season 1 about?
Introducing the main characters, setting the tone for the show, showing that it can be dark and sometimes really cool, like the Scraplet episode, and then introducing the main plot, which is, Team Prime going up against Unicron.
Stuff? What's Season 2 about?
Stopping the Decepticons from getting artifacts that can, help them win the war, and then later on introducing the actual artifacts that are important to the story, which is, the Star Saber, the Forge of Solus Prime, and the Omega Keys. So, yeah, and so they have to go to the Omega Lock and, restore Cybertron, just for Optimus Prime to have to destroy it in order to save Earth.
Stuff? Season 3 is about stopping the Decepticon invasion of Earth and finding the Predacon corpses, but that comes far too late.
Oh my god. He actually describes something about the show that isn't false. Congratulations, everybody clap for him. This is an amazing discovery. He actually cannot spew out misinformation. So, congratulations.
And I know it's not fair to keep comparing this series to the best written show in the franchise, but this is the continuity that people keep thinking they can put on a pedestal next to Beast Wars.
Look, I'm not going to deny that Beast Wars isn't a good show, but Prime is definitely a contender. While Beast Wars does have good writing, it contradicts some of that writing sometimes, which can, not benefit the story. And Prime definitely does that sometimes too, but neither of them are worse than the other. They're both good, and you're kind of just nostalgia blinded.
The action is repetitive to the point of being boring, but it can't be predictable because it does whatever it wants. The tone of the show is pretending to be dark, but it's about as dark in content as a blank sheet of paper, and about as interesting as one too.
Or maybe you can't understand that death doesn't equal dark all the time. It's just like, oh, well, just because it's not a lot of death doesn't... It's not dark. You have death. Death equals dark, not trauma.
The human characters are ball cancer, and the show is too fucking long.
You're just not patient, and you can't appreciate a story, and, saying it's too long, you just think it's too long. G1 is longer than this show, and there's less going on. And that's more entertaining to you than, this story with actual plot points? Come on. Grow up and stop being a nostalgia-blinded hypocrite towards shows that just don't hold up to you as well. If you don't like the show, don't watch it. There's no need to complain about it. So grow up and stop acting like a child.
It's almost twice as long as Beast Wars, but it's got half the plot. It just drones on and on forever while not saying anything. And then the end of Season 2 and the third season happen, and for 20 beautiful episodes, the show actually gets good.
Wow. I can't believe you can find this show entertaining in the slightest. So, let's see what your reasoning is why the show is better now than it was before.
The second they introduce Smokescreen, it's just like, holy shit, a character who actually acts like they want to be here, who has a real personality, operating at a greater than 5 out of 10?
So it's only when you introduce the character who isn't really close to war, he didn't get to experience it, so he's immature, he doesn't know anything, and he's more enthusiastic, unlike the others who have been forged by war, that you like the show. If you don't like serious topics, and you like more lighthearted stuff, go watch something else. Just go.
Sure, he's clearly supposed to be Hot Rod just with Smokescreen's name, but I'll take this. And holy shit, they introduced Ultra Magnus, and despite being stoic, he actually has a personality, and he's awesome. He's so fucking angry all the time, I love it.
I genuinely just don't understand how one of your biggest complaints, in fact, your biggest complaint, is just how characters don't have emotions in a war scenario. It's so stupid, and it's so dumb. You take mad characters and immature characters that have much to learn, and you prefer those over characters who have a good dynamic with each other and are likable over the, like, come on. And I'm not saying those characters are bad. I'm just saying they have a bit to learn, and they aren't that cool at the beginning.
Also, Dreadwind is the one other interesting Decepticon, and they introduced real stakes as the Decepticons start a for-real invasion of Earth with a more unified front, and I feel like people might finally actually die. And the fights start having some flair and style too, where it manages to look cool as shit and people use clever powers in interesting ways. Where was this show the entire fucking time up until now?
It's been there, you just haven't cared to notice it. This show has been there. It's had consequences. Like at the end of the first season, Optimus Prime loses his memory in order to save Earth, and he manages to regain it near the beginning of the second season, which technically reverses the consequences, but it wasn't just like no consequences, so that's better. And this show, like, it's been here. You only now recognize it because there's some characters that you think are cool because, you know, they aren't incredibly stoic and don't have trauma.
Seriously, if you just start at New Recruit, the show is actually decent and fun and such a reprieve from the boredom that came before. What happened? How did a show this torturously boring actually get pretty damn good in its final act?
Because you refuse to recognize things that have already been there just because characters could be written better in your eyes, even though they're already written perfect.
It took way too long to get there. Just skip the first 40 episodes and you will be happier than me. But I can't in good conscience give this show anything better than a D. It is a badly written, boringly acted, depressingly animated series that the people making clearly had no love for. And if they did love it, then it's even sadder.
This show is a well-written, amazingly animated, and dark show. Not for an adult show, it's not dark, but for a kid show, it is. Because if you don't know, it's a kid show. Which, normally, I don't care if it's dark, and I prefer if it's dark, and if it's a kid's show, it's just cooler to brag about it. But you're getting so mad at this show when it's just as good as Beast Wars, and a tad better than G1 in my personal opinion and preferences, and you're getting mad at people who had an actual passion when you don't even get to do what you like to do. You didn't get to do animation. You get to review toys. But at least you get a paycheck. I think that's sadder than these animators liking what they're doing and actually appreciating the work.
And I just don't know what changed because the creatives behind the show seem like the exact ones it always had for its whole run. Though to be fair, it was apparently just a giant revolving door because they had like 20 writers to direct.
So you know it's the same writers. You just refuse to believe the show's good beyond this point.
If we are just judging New Recruit and onwards, I'll give the show a B. But this is one of the Transformers properties I have the absolute greatest interest in never watching again.
Good. I hope you don't watch it again. In fact, I don't think you even deserve to watch this show. You don't appreciate it about anything. You don't deserve to watch this show, and I don't think you even deserve to call yourself really a Transformers fan. You only kind of like those shows because you grew up with them, and, like, you only really like Beast Wars and G1. Like, come on. You can't be a fan if you only like two things in the entire franchise.
My time would be more enjoyed scrubbing dishes. The show's reputation in the fandom is undeserved, and is only held in such high regard because it was many people's first Transformers series.
No, in fact, this show is definitely well deserved. And I think I would love if you would go scrub some dishes instead of, watch this show. Because that's, you deserve to go do that. Go do that since you prefer watching this show. It's definitely well deserved. And you call us nostalgia blinded, even though you're the one you're definitely nostalgia blinded. We're not the one. You need to get out of your delusion, bro.
Also, people really want to bang RC for some reason.
You just had to throw that in there? Throw in the towel real quick before you left? Well, anyway. So, after watching this video, you probably know my thoughts on this person, which is that they're a hypocritical, nostalgia-blinded dumbass. They can't recognize, actual writing, and they only like what they grew up with. Yeah, but sorry for this entire video that's just an hour long, which is a rant, but, yeah, don't support this creator. They're kind of stupid, but I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching. This took some time to create. Have a good day, and please don't be this guy.